Motley have raised in respect to meetings. All right? Sorry. Or, sorry. Yes, that's, well, we can look on it in 74, Procedure and Select Committee. I think that it speaks to that our how matters get to committees to put in a mandatory requirement of at least one meeting. So we can look on that when we go through 74 or 74A. Senator Scott Motley.
Also thank Mrs. Rosemary Beckford. I know I'm messing up the name, but forgive me. But thank you very much for having included the minutes of the previous Standing Orders Committee. They were very helpful and very revealing. I noticed that there was no discussion on Section 70 in that one, but so that sometimes it shows that as you go along, you do find it necessary to address other matters. But it was, for me, very informative, and I want to express my appreciation.
Ms. Beckford, I get pure big up today. Yes, Senators. Senator.
Mr. Chairman, in relation to the appropriate place for such an amendment in terms of the session select committees, I'm proposing that you consider also whether it wouldn't be more appropriate under 66 as a sessional select committee, a special select committee under 71 would also, I don't know how you consider it there, because a special select committee by its very nature may not be one that goes across legislative years. And because under 74A is dealing really with the referral of matters as opposed to the procedure.
But, and I also said 74.
74
speaks to, like if you look in 74.8.
Yes, okay, I didn't catch that part. So,
yeah.
Thank you, okay.
So we can look, whilst we're going through 74 or 74A, as to how we can fit in what you're proposing. It is now 7 minutes past 10. And, but other than, before we get off it, and adjourn this meeting, in 70A 2B, where it says that the caucus has the duty of receiving submissions from citizens, etc., it gets down to members of parliament and representatives of government agencies. Does senators fall under members of parliament? In 70A 2B. 70A 2B. So it says that they would have duty to receive submissions from, and it lists out groups. Your members of parliament incorporates. Can I get some confirmation of that? Because I notice at times that we refer to members of the Senate versus members of parliament. Would senators, because we wouldn't want to exclude Senator Morris and Senator Gale from making submissions for consideration. It does. Okay.
If I recall, Sophia went out, but if I recall at our discussion, one of the reasons was we didn't want to exclude particularly our males, and we wanted them to also feel that there's a safe space that they could come and share their views. So it includes both the upper house and the lower house. You don't need to invite yourself, we'll invite you.
The distinction comes when it says members of the House of Representatives versus members of Parliament. So members of Parliament incorporates the Senate. So we're satisfied with that, right? Don't need any clarification there.
The House of Representatives. Before that, it speaks to the members of the Senate. So you're saying that the House of Representative females will be sitting with the females of the Senate for this caucus, which is different from the general reference to members of parliament in 2B, which would include both.
Mr. Kwan?
Add, and not to, I'm not sure what Mr. Cohen is going to do or say, but perhaps if you could speak to the clerk who had assisted us, what's her name? It was, we had a very diligent assistant, Miss Cunningham, I think. No, Miss Cunningham, not the attorney. She was supporting admin support. She was very... Cohen, yes. She may be in a better position to provide some guidance to the committee, so perhaps we could reach out to her and we could report on it next week, because she would also be privy to a lot of the background information, that discussion that took place.
All right, thank you. But Mr. Kwan, go ahead.
Yeah, very well. Chairman, just to say that it appears that a review of several provisions would need to be done, because it appears that there's an inconsistency in how members are defined. Sometimes sometimes reference is made to members, other times reference is made to members of the Senate, as was referred to by the member. Certainly 71 makes reference to members of the Senate, as opposed to members of Parliament. If we look at, in the Senate standing orders, correct. So generally in the Senate standing orders, members of the Senate are referred to either as members or members of the Senate. In 70A2B, there is a reference to members of Parliament, but it could be interpreted that, because if you look at the other organizations and groups made reference to in that subsection, it speaks to outside groups or persons who may not be members within the definition of these standing orders, making representations to the committee.
Senator Scott Motley?
I was thinking that the establishment of the caucus of women's parliamentarians would necessarily have to make reference to members of parliament, yes, because it's a joint.
Well, it says members of the House of Representatives.
No, I thought that the point that was being made was how members of the Senate, as opposed to Senate and now parliamentarians, was being utilized. But I'm pointing out that in this instance, because this particular caucus consists of the members of the Senate with the members of the House of Representatives, that is why you come to now having the term of members of Parliament. That was my understanding when we had been discussing it. So I think that this particular standing order is slightly different in its references from the others, because it's the only standing order that combines persons from the two separate houses. All the other standing orders refer to the standing orders which relate specifically to the conduct of the Senate. I'm not sure if I'm making myself clear.
All right, so we appreciate that members of Parliament is inclusive of both. Ms. Brandon?
Chairman, I have the privilege of the standing orders of the House of Representatives, and the standing orders of the House of Representatives, the provision in relation to the caucus of women parliamentarians is the same, but the difference is in relation to when it's making reference to the House of Representatives and the Senate. Now, in my view, I do believe that the reference to the members of Parliament are members of the House of Representatives, because when we look further down in 78(2)(c), it makes reference to all parliamentarians, and in my view, all parliamentarians would mean members of the Senate and members of the House of Representatives. So the distinction in terms of members of Parliament, it's in relation to members of the House of Representatives.
Okay.
So even though it may not have been the intent, but based on the my interpretation, I would believe that it's in relation to members of the House of Representatives.
All right. So basically, what I'm saying is that we don't want to have a situation where you can have different opinions on what is contained here. And how, you see, you may get to an issue of interpretation and so forth. I believe that what we are looking at should be absolutely clear as to what is intended. And just listening to the discussion, we have gotten opposing views. And we are now at 10:16. And so, as the substantive president has said, I always give homework, then that is our homework to determine whether the reference to members of parliament is all inclusive. Should we make it clearer? That is our homework to determine for the next meeting. I will at this time, it being 10:16 and 39 seconds, ask for someone to so move for the adjournment. Senator Floyd Morris, seconded by Senator Scott Motley. This Standing Orders Committee is now adjourned. Thank you very much.
What is the role of a backbencher in government? I'm glad you asked. They're members of parliament who are not appointed to cabinet. So they sit in the back of the legislature and they apply pressure. They examine what government legislates, participate in parliament debates, raise issues and advocate and question chamber when things don't look straight. Backbenchers represent the constituents in parliament. Backbenchers oversee the interests of citizens, you and me. But how can they be agents of government accountability after them no hold a portfolio? And them and a minister? No. So then how can they facilitate government transparency? And the next thing, them and a front bencher. So how them affect me? You see, a lot of work is in committees. So these portfolio-free MPs with less dire responsibilities are more accessible to you and me. So they help with policy, but it helps if we engage them, you see. So they're not just in the back benches, but on the ground, in the trenches. Though in the back of parliament, we're at the front of their cause.